What's up, people? Absolutely packed show today. We said we didn't know what we were going to do yesterday, but then since that point, turns out that the three Seahawks new coordinators had press conferences, so that's something to look into. Then there's an Adam Schefter report relating to Geno Smith, who we spoke about yesterday. And we also have some other news that I forgot right now, Griff, but I've got it in the notes, so it will be okay.
Good. Because I don't remember either.
Oh, yeah, John Schneider went on the radio and said nothing.
Oh, yeah.
Said Daniel.
But, you know.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's really, honestly, he said too much.
The man who said too much.
Yeah. Why? I mean, maybe we could talk about that in the show. Yeah, we'll talk about that in the show. We'll talk about that. Ben, I take my tea with a bit of milk in it, usually. I've got an Earl Grey right now. Daniel, hello. Christopher, hello. Matt, hello. Jay, hello. Good to see you, overloaders.
1%, 2% whole milk?
Oh, well, see, the thing is, I really like whole milk, but I don't have tea that often, and I don't have cereal that often. And so for me to then justify buying whole milk when other people in the house, you know, wouldn't drink it would just be a lot of waste. And then financially, if you're buying like a really small like portion of whole milk, then is that really worth it? So very boring answer, but I get semi-skimmed.
Okay, skimmed. Okay.
Do you have semi-skimmed?
Well, is I think what you call semi-skimmed, we call 1% or 2%.
Right.
Well, do you guys have? This is the whole half and half cream, heavy cream fiasco all over again. We've got our
let's not do that.
No. Let's not do that. Dive right in. No. We're not ready.
No, first we have to thank in the previous video's comments, TJ Deuce 06 commented on the Younger Dryas impact.
That's right.
Excellent comment.
It was an excellent comment. Guys, check it out. It was much more informative than what I was able to deliver last night. Very, very fascinating stuff. I did watch that video.
Oh, nice. So you're like doubly informed.
Stefan Milo is a great YouTube channel. Yeah, what wasn't great?
Cool.
Wasn't great. So back to important matters, Matty.
Right. Enough of last week's, yesterday's conversation where we were told crustaceans were butterflies or vice versa.
So I got more details on that.
Oh,
it's theorized that all arthropods are evolved from crustaceans, and so therefore butterflies are. I don't know. Anyway, news just dropped right now.
What news?
The Seahawks are hiring Frisman Jackson as their wide receivers coach, per source. Oh. Jackson coached the Steelers wideouts the last 2 seasons. The former Cleveland Browns receiver also led the Titans and Panthers wide receiver rooms in recent years.
Okay.
That's a good hire.
Should we start the podcast then? Because that's like actual newsy stuff, right?
Hit it, Matty.
Okay, hold on. Let me get the tweet up. We can share the tweet here.
From Fowler.
Fowler. Jezza. Why did he why did he want to leave his job? Why was he fired? Anyway, we'll talk about that. Right. Good to see you all, chat. Please do like the video, etc., etc. Right, let's do it. Welcome to the Seattle Overload podcast, where we have Seahawks news to talk about. Seattle's hired a new coach. They've hired 3 new coaches, in fact. We also have a Geno Smith development, if you can call it that, but the reporting of said development is certainly, the tone of that, certainly something worth talking about. And we've also heard from Seattle's 3 new coordinators. Yes, offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb, defensive play caller, well, not play caller, but defensive coordinator Aden Durde, AD, and then finally Jay Harbaugh, the special teams coordinator. So It's a packed Seattle overload today. First off, let's start with the Geno Smith news. So, it's not really news as such. Essentially, Adam Schefter reported that the Seahawks are going to keep him on the roster, which the significance of that is February 16th is when his $12.7 million in his contract for this year becomes fully guaranteed. Before that point, it wasn't. So, good for Geno Smith. I believe, as Jason over the cap pointed out, Seattle has a trade window through March 17th when it comes to Geno Smith, because that's the date where March 18th his roster bonus of $9.6 million becomes due. And so, if Seattle traded him before that point, then while his $12.7 million this year are guaranteed, a different team would be on the books for that if it's a pre-June 1st trade. And why are we talking about a trade? Well, as we spoke about before, literally yesterday, there is a slight decision to be had with Geno, the cap number, the general number of regression. Perhaps he's not a star signal caller like ownership wants, etc., etc. And Schefter's actual tone in the tweet, Griff, was kind of weird, right?
Yeah. It was really weird. I mean, he immediately mentioned the word trade, right? So you wonder, is that Schefter hedging for that possibility? Is that his own editorializing, or is that his sources are team sources and they're kind of suggesting that, like nudging him in that direction, and he's taking the ball and running with it? Who knows? So this is not the tweet where it mentions that he could be traded.
No, but this is the initial tweet where he said he was informed today that he will remain on the roster through this week, which is, what is it, Thursday today? Wow, through this week. I know the significance of Friday, but through this week is kind of weird. And then he quote tweeted that and said, "The Seahawks believe in today's market with salaries soaring for starting quarterbacks. The right decision was to pay the money," being the $12.7 million, per sources. "Now Geno Smith will represent a value to them or any other team that decides to reach out to see if it can acquire Smith via trade." But Seattle now has locked in Smith, and Smith has locked in his $12.7 million. Schefter has in the past had some issues with the tones of his tweet being kind of off, but this feels slightly informed. I mean, you could read that as a solicitation from Seattle, if they are Schefter's source, someone in the organization, that, hey, queue up, come and form a line and start offering good trades for Geno Smith. It's just such an odd report of that kind of news.
Yeah. And the first sentence, too, is weird. "The Seahawks believe in today's market with salaries soaring for starting quarterbacks." It's like they're trying to validate.
They're really talking themselves into it.
Right. But also like they're trying to signal to whoever's reading that, like, hey, this is our rationale, as though they're desperate to give a rationale other than say, hey, this is our starting quarterback. We like him a lot. We think highly of him. Of course, we're keeping it. You know what I mean? And I wonder, are they trying to signal to ownership even? They want this kind of messaging out there? That seems naive of me to say, because I'm sure that they have conversations about it.
Right. But that is somewhat weird. Informed.
Right. It's odd. It's odd framing. Or maybe are they trying to say? Maybe are they just trying to say, like, hey, we've got him on a good deal? I don't know. Right.
So Geno Smith tweeted, let's look at the times here. 6 minutes before Adam Schefter's tweet, Geno Smith, 11 minutes before, Geno Smith tweeted, "Thank you, Lord," with a praying emoji. Then 5 minutes before, reminded people, I thank the Lord every day, by the way. Geno also quote tweeting Mina Kimes saying, whose tweet said, the likelihood that Seattle improves upon Geno Smith is extremely low, reminding people, Geno said, "I'm only getting better!" exclamation point. So, not much more to be said on this subject than was said yesterday by us, but again, there's, I think there's concerns that they might do something in term, we've expressed how we feel about Geno Smith and what we think Seattle should do and how they should proceed in 2024. But there's a bit more of a concern that they may actually do something else.
Yeah.
And I know it wasn't just us reading the comment like that. So, chat, let us know what you think of this. But
what is your vibe from it? What do you
Yeah.
take from that tweet?
Yeah. How much stock do you put in Adam Schefter? But yeah, as Matt points out in the chat, the tweet made it sound like the Seahawks are open for business on Geno Smith offers. Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense to it makes sense to, even if you are Seattle, to be open to any possibility, right? It doesn't make any sense to shut off a notion, because what if someone puts, for example, the 3rd round pick in your lap? That's not going to happen. Or maybe part of a package or something. I think that realistically, Schneider isn't going to make any move up for a quarterback unless it's a chance at one of the big 3, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. I don't think, other than that, they're picking a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round. I don't think they're taking one at 16 or in the 2nd if they trade back or whatever.
Yep.
So I don't know.
Maybe there's a quarterback who Schneider feels similarly about than, what he supposedly did with, I say supposedly. We're led to believe, and there's quite a lot of strong evidence that he was a massive fan of Patrick Mahomes at the time, and maybe there's a similar guy in this draft, and maybe there's a guy who he feels, okay, this is a guy who is worth getting enough assets for, if we can, via Geno Smith, trading up for, and seeing if we have that option available to us, and if it is open to us, we can ride with Drew Lock for a year and whatever kind of wildly crazy stuff that could be. I don't know. Anyways, something to monitor, and very telling that this we timed our Geno Smith thing perfectly, Griff. So well done us.
Look at us.
Right. So the other news, kind of more concrete news here. Pete Carroll's son, Nate Carroll, is the pass game coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, as is Pat McPherson. He's now the tight ends coach in Carolina. So there's a sort of...
I missed that completely.
So the kind of mini Seattle offense is forming under Dave Canales in Carolina.
Oh, I missed that completely.
So that's going to be a fun one. Good for Nate getting a pass game coordinator role. Wow.
It's interesting that Monty Kiffin's son coaches offense and Pete Carroll's sons coach offense. Although doesn't Lane have a brother? I think he's a linebacker somewhere for the Houston Texans.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Chris Kiffin is a linebacker coach.
Right. Well, yeah, it's kind of messed up. Why couldn't they just,
I mean, they probably have special insight into the sport.
Why couldn't they learn leather spill leather until, the cows came home?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder how that shook out.
Anyway.
It's interesting.
But in more relevant Seahawks news, we have 3 new Seattle coaches now. Seattle's hiring Rams pass game specialist Jake Peetz as their passing game coordinator on offense. Peetz was the former offensive coordinator at LSU. He had also interviewed for the Buccaneers offensive coordinator this year. That's per Mike Garafolo's reporting. We can dive into Peetz a bit more, but also Jay Harbaugh in his press conference, which we'll break down, he announced that Devin Fitzsimmons is arriving as the assistant special teams coach. He spent 1 year in Carolina last year and has got 10 years of experience coaching in the NFL. And then, just as we came on air, Griff, you're in tune to this, well done, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reports that the Seahawks are hiring Frisman Jackson as their wide receivers coach. Jackson coached the Steelers wideouts the last 2 seasons. He used to play receiver for the Cleveland Browns, and he'd led the Titans and Panthers wide receiver rooms over recent years too. So, Griff, where do you want to go first? Jackson, Fitzsimmons, or Peets?
I think that Peets is probably the most prominent hire that was made. So we can start there. I like that they took someone from the McVay tree just to have on staff for a number of reasons. One, there's kind of some soft continuity with what Seattle already was, of course, with Waldron coming from there. I think that the Waldron offense, or like that brand of offense, is kind of generally what fits Geno and the receivers and everything, right? And I think that whatever Grubb was going to create was going to fit them as well. But I think that he needed an NFL mind to kind of bridge the transition from college to the pros, and to kind of just have a deputy on hand, a lieutenant that kind of speaks that language and everything. So I like this move. At least I like the idea of hiring from McVay's squad. Jake Peets himself, I don't think LSU liked him very much when he was the OC there. But, as a staff member, he could be a very good staff member. Maybe he's upped his game since he's been with the Rams. So generally, I like this. I especially like it for their drop back game when it's time to access the intermediate. So, Matty, what do you think about Peets?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting background, really. Like, he was with the Raiders under Bill Musgrave when they were the OC, when he was the OC, and they went 12-4, of course, in 2016. But yeah, got on staff with McVay in Washington in 2014. Only 38, so he's been very experienced considering. Was assistant quarterbacks coach in Jacksonville in 2012. Yeah, this is kind of what they needed. And, you hear Grubb talk about, he was kind of asked about how his stuff translates. This is going to help that, as you said. This is kind of the extra piece required, I think. And we'll see if he... Yeah, they kind of lost that, right? So, important. Okay. Right. Do you have much to say on Devin Fitzsimmons? Have you been grinding the special teams tape? I know Pardon?
No, I was cutting you off. My bad.
No. Cut me off. Go ahead.
I was going to say, can't say I have.
Oh.
Yeah, if Jay Harbaugh likes him, then great. Jay Harbaugh himself sounds like a good coach. You probably can't do better than Larry Izzo, though. But I'm sure Harbaugh's fine. And so whoever he likes to be his assistant is also probably fine. So, whatever.
Yeah. It seems like he's been a long time special teams assistant. So there you go. Good for him. Good for him.
How about that,
hey? And then finally, Jeremy Fowler of ESPN reporting about Frisman Jackson, Steelers wide receiver coach previously, and he was with the Panthers for 2 seasons before that, with the Steelers in 2022 and 2023. Was with the Titans in 2017 as their receivers coach. So some NFL experience. Spent 2 seasons at Baylor in between that. Been in college before that, and played 6 years in the NFL, although the Jets was a practice squad only kind of thing.
It's so hard to tell who's a good wide receivers coach and who isn't, especially if they, don't have like a passing game coordinator title or something like that. I don't know how you're actually able to gauge this. Like, is it a good hire or is it not? Ryan Grubb tends to attract good assistants, so I'm going to assume that was a good move, right? If you just look at his resume, like the receiving cores of the teams he's coached haven't necessarily been stellar, but it's that's just a more so rostering. I mean, the Steelers did have Pickens, and there was some thought that maybe Pickens wouldn't pan out, and he kind of is, But then also, like, was he fired? Did his contract run out and they didn't resign? Like what's the dynamic there?
Mm. Yeah, and did he, maybe he got on staff because he knew Matt Canada, right? And obviously Canada's
true.
been, so you just don't know with the kind of shake-up going on there whose kind of guy he was. But I mean, it's cool he made the NFL as an undrafted free agent coming out of Western Illinois University, and was able to suit up for 5 regular seasons,
Right, definitely.
Good for him. So yeah, something to monitor. That's interesting. I don't see any overlap in terms of how he'd have crossed paths necessarily with Grubb. But I guess just as a guy who's coaching the heck out of fairly small school receivers in the kind of early 2010s to mid 2010s,
Right.
And then gets to the NFL because of that. Apparently he's a passing game coordinator at Temple in 2015, 2016, Griff. So maybe that's
so he's got experience there. He might be involved with game planning. We'll see. We'll probably never know, but he might have like a third down role or something. Like, what was it? Kerry Joseph, the quarterback coach last year, he had like the red zone role, so he might have something involved there. But we'll see. Yeah,
that would make some sense. He worked under Matt Rule when he was at Temple, and then back with the Panthers in 2020 and 2021. I mean, DJ Moore was nice,
Yeah, true.
Well, interesting. And he is also still kind of fitting that fairly young theme. He's 44 years old. Right.
Indeed.
There we go. Wait, which is better, chat? This is better, right? No, this is better. There you go. So, we heard from the 3 new Seahawks coordinators, as I said. Griff, where do you want to take it first? Special teams, OC, or DC?
Let's just go in order. Harbaugh was first, right?
He was. He was excited. And this is probably going to be the shortest one. What stood out to you about that?
He definitely can command a room. He's got the gravitas to be a coach, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, like, special teams coach, you can only evaluate the units. You can only evaluate him by looking at the units he's coached, and Michigan had good special teams. So, what more can you say? He definitely seems like, he believes in the fundamentals and everything. So I'm curious if he tries to pick a side, defense or offense at some point. I feel like special teams relates to defense more so, because it's a lot like run fits and everything. I don't know. What did you get from Jay?
Yeah, there's not much to say really. Yeah. I think the commander room thing's important. Seemed fairly positive.
Yeah. I mean, you're kind of a junction point for the offense and defense, because you have offense and defensive players on special teams, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably a really important role that a special teams coach can have in terms of team culture and everything, and uniformity and all that. Like, and maybe it's not required of the special teams coach, but if they do have it, like, it's just an extra dimension that kind of ties everything together.
One thing I'd say is he's like a slightly more he seems fairly similar personality wise to Macdonald, but slightly more upbeat. Maybe kind of elaborates a bit more on things, less I don't know, but it's interesting that they'd known each other for about 10 years, as he described it, and they got to know each other in Baltimore, and he mentioned how they were similar in age, and they're both guys into football, so it kind of sounds like they're sort of friends, and they got to know each other like that, like a coaching friend, so...
Right. Gotta know a guy.
And the way he speaks about football, I mean, it's obvious because Macdonald's big influence is Harbaugh, the dad, right?
Right.
And the brother... Jay's uncle, but just all this talk about fundamentals and being good at blocking and tackling and like the real basics of stuff is obviously aligned with how Macdonald's looking to coach as well.
Right.
Yeah, but as pointed out in the chat, are you guys really analyzing special teams hires? What's wrong with you two? Yeah, we'll move on from that. So next up was Aden Durde, AD. So Griff.
Yeah.
Let's not do the accent thing. Let's just not do that, okay?
I don't hear accents.
What accent? Football is as he shows, football is an international global game. So moving on from that, what else stood out to you?
I mean, you can only get a vibe from their personality from these things, right? He didn't get into scheme because that's the awkward thing. Like, it's not his defense. Like, I know people said, like, with Pete Carroll and everything, like, oh, it's it's not really so and so's defense, it's Pete Carroll's defense. It's not Dan Quinn's or whatever. But like Pete did let them call plays, and they absolutely shaped the scheme and everything. It was collaborative. Of course, Pete had the final say, and each DC, we know it wasn't just Pete's defense in the way that people say that, because the defense changed pretty considerably, coordinator to coordinator. But with Durde, I mean, he's going to have a huge influence on applying the scheme, right? Game planning and everything. I mean, Macdonald literally cannot do everything. That's why you hire assistants to assist and everything. And he's the highest ranking assistant, but like, it's not his scheme. He's not going to make massive influence. It's more like taking the playbook and like whatever his assigned role is and applying it everything. But I didn't really grasp anything other than I think he mentioned like his coaching style and everything, like honesty. I'm surely like he'll resonate with players, from Dallas. The players really seem to like him. So I think he's a great culture fit and probably a really good deputy to have for Macdonald. And like, he must have killed the interview, right? Because Macdonald could have probably taken a few guys, right? He probably, could have convinced John and Jody to shell out the cash necessary to get one of his Baltimore guys, right? And all those guys got promotions. So for Durde to really distinguish himself, and Schneider said that Durde distinguished himself in interviews or through secondhand accounts through other people they interviewed. And I'm sure Dan Quinn was part of that. They must have really been all over this guy. And for Macdonald to also be in on him speaks really highly of what he can do.
Yeah, and you know what stands out to me? Just every time he talks, he says he does it in the same way, and he says very similar things when he's asked, questions. Very consistent in that sense, and that's just from me, hearing him, because he went on the radio afterwards, and we didn't really learn much more about him there. But hearing him in this press conference, hearing him in the Hard Knocks stuff, and how he's talking to the players, but also hearing him on the Big Jim show with Jim Hamilton, which is the podcast appearance I keep referencing, and now I've finally actually remembered the name, back in July 2023. He clearly he knows who he is. He kind of knows what he needs to be as a coach and how he's going to get there. He's very, very... And kind of, when I shared that stuff, which I was told about his character from those who coached him at the time, how he kind of understands people, Rick said, right? And he always wants to understand people. That keeps shining through. But yeah, in terms of the scheme stuff, it's obviously clear that it's going to be Macdonald's thing, as Macdonald already outlined. Macdonald's going to call the players to start off with, but I liked how it didn't really come up. He mentioned how, yes, in the interview, the plan for him to take over the play calling did come up, but he was then saying how he's focused on the present and the now, and how things don't go well for him when he starts looking forward, and he just needs to focus on the present time and work, towards what they're doing right now. So he must have absolutely smashed the interview. again, he says similar things to kind of what Macdonald says. I think he'll be truly bought into that idea of really kind of fitting it around the players, and which obviously, feels obvious, but it's very hard to do sometimes. But
Right.
the way he just talks about teaching, his passion for teaching and understanding his different guys and all that stuff must have been massively appealing to them. So,
Right.
and he seems like he has a cool personality, and
Definitely.
yeah, he was very affable as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a good culture fit. That was something that I think stood out the most to me.
yep. And funny on the radio, he was asked about. I'm sure you know about the Legion of Boom, and he's like probably sat there like, yeah, I coach under Dan Quinn, like, and he pointed out how he's watched so much of those games because he coached under Dan Quinn, and
Right.
that all of the tape would have been Legion of Boom stuff, especially to start off with. So, like all the good examples. So,
Right. Yeah.
but
That was,
what the media didn't do too much, like, haha, you're British. That was good. Not too much of that.
we can. So
We
doesn't stop us from
we could.
Matty. He is English.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
is. We can't.
He is. He is.
Do you like being reminded that you have an English accent?
Yeah, because sometimes I forget, It was great how Dave Wyman said, I can't understand him on the radio to John Schneider. That was real cool.
Yeah, that was
Great stuff, man.
that, I mean, yeah, that
Funny
was
joke.
that was Wyman acting like that was the first time.
Yeah,
And
that's my problem with it. You think that's the first time that anyone said that? Like, that's a really funny comment, firstly. And secondly, that's been said so many times. So many times. I actually know for a fact that when he was with the Panthers, Durde as a player, fans would just scream like abuse from the stands during training camp, saying you're a bum and like you don't belong here, and like you're British.
and that becomes like particularly problematic considering that he's a black man, and like pretty much discriminating. People are a little too comfortable with it, I think.
Well, and he mentioned how he has a chip on his shoulder, and he mentions his self-talk, and sometimes he thinks he creates it, but he actually has a genuine reason for a chip on his shoulder, like multiple genuine reasons. So
I'm sure.
I mean, he is very, very impressive, and I'm intrigued to see how he grows and how quickly he grows, and how quickly he does end up calling the defense if he gets to that.
Definitely, and you can tell, like, this is, I mean, lots of coaches in the NFL are very good. Some are better than others. Some are merit isn't why they've risen the ranks. It's probably a variable. I'm sure it's always a variable, but compared to others, and they have limited opportunities. But you look at his career path, like we mentioned when they first hired him and everything. I mean, he rises the ranks everywhere he goes, and like he's not had the entry that other coaches have had. So it's merit that is allowing him to climb the ladder. So good stuff all around.
There you go. So interested to watch AD develop, and so finally we actually got a bit more schematic stuff, I think, when it comes to Ryan Grubb. And part of that is the media better kind of understanding how to ask offense questions. A lot of people are, and also you can speak more easily in looser terms about an offensive scheme.
Yeah, you can wish-wash and everything.
Yeah, you can wish-wash, and I imagine it's a bit different also because Grubb is actually the play caller who's going to be designing the offense as well.
Right.
Obviously with some head coach input, but Durde's coming in to run the Macdonald system and then maybe put a bit of his spin on things. Anyway, we learned a bit more about what Grubb thinks about football. Griff, where do you want to take this one?
Um, the thing that jumps out to me was him talking about how, like, when asked about the transition, excuse me, he said a lot of the play action concepts they lifted straight from the NFL. So it's like we're just translating the NFL back to college, back to the NFL, and that's kind of in line with like what we've said and like and what is obvious. Like, yeah, when it's time to dial up 6.5-man protections or 7-man protections, or it's time to call play action, like all that stuff translates immediately. It's just that is only going to comprise 20% of your total offensive snaps, at least early down snaps. So what are you going to do for your other 80%? Like, obviously, some of that's going to be the run game, but the questions are going to come down to like what will define the offense is, what will the drop back game look like, and how do you, or how much quick game are you building out of? How much 5-step are you building out of? And going to be half field reads, full field reads. We didn't get a whole lot of that, of course. Why would we? But but you can still take his comments about what translates from what to what and extrapolate that. And overall, it's like it's not that big of a deal. Like they brought in Pete's. What he did at Fresno State with Haener probably fits the NFL a little bit more squarely. So, it will be a cool blend of everything. It will also include a little bit of what they did last year, just because like the tape is there of the players and Pete's. It's again, I'm just repeating myself. But yeah, he gave a little bit more substantive answers and everything. So what did you take away?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. I liked how John P. Boyle of Seahawks.com asked about the differences and challenges of the college level to the NFL. And, he mentioned the hashes as the obvious thing, but then he also talked about the personnel-based scheme. So you have to be more alert as to who's on the football field and if it's based on nickel. Whereas in college, obviously teams are recruiting for a scheme. And this is me kind of explaining it. This isn't what he said. But obviously teams are recruiting for like a specific scheme in mind, but you really have like your best personnel package and you're going to try and run that as much as possible. But also it's so spread out that I think it's very rare that a team's going to be able to be really good in one personnel package and then really good in a quite different other personnel package, right?
Right.
Whereas in the NFL, the base and the nickel packages that Grubb mentioned, the identification of personnel problems, that's kind of more vast. You have to be far more alert to it, as he said. It can be more prevalent in the NFL, he said. And then he also mentioned the limited possessions that exist.
Right. That is interesting. That's right. The limited so the personnel packages were really interesting. I imagine he's going to want to stick in 11 as much as he can, primarily because of you've got 3 receivers, right? And then the tight end situation, they probably will only roll with 1 or 2 tight ends that they even want to bother getting on the field next year, just cap wise. But so yeah, he kind of is signaling that I think he's going to stick in one personnel package a lot, like they might be a 70% 11 personnel team that also fits how he likes to incorporate the run too. But then with the comment on shorter possessions, I wonder if that changes how you kind of have to speed up your sequencing almost. You can't spend as much time setting things up. Does he try to focus they were already as explosive as they could try to be, right, at UW. I wonder, though, with shorter possessions, does he feel the need to try to squeeze in more explosives per drive than maybe he did when he was at Fresno State when they didn't go as deep as much? Because he knows he can't go as deep as much as he did at UW. He can't. It's not possible. It would be you could pull off maybe 1 year and then you're doomed to regress the next year. So I don't know. How do you take the whole decreased possession thing? How do you relate that to how that might change his offense or strategy and everything?
Well, I think that ties into why teams don't chuck it round as much, right? Because there's you kind of have to have you have to drive the football, and if you're taking more risk, right, with passing, It's why the run rate goes up, because you each drive has to really, really count. I think that's kind of where he was leaning with that. And interestingly, he was asked about, being a pass-heavy offense in Washington, and he mentioned kind of how Macdonald had, but how that was kind of just to match his personnel that they had at the time. That mentioned that they had 3 receivers who are going to go on to be drafted at UW. And I don't know
Right.
what more to say. He also mentioned every step you take in advancement in this industry, you're going to find tougher mismatches, and just the level of intelligence and the amount of thought put into each game plan. That's the part that is so intriguing about the NFL. The chess match that happens every week, being right on your math in the box, and the room for error is so much less, which again comes back to that kind of limited possessions and, being able to run the ball efficiently, but probably having to do it a bit more,
Right.
Yeah.
I will be very curious to see how much under center he runs.
That would have been a cool question, right?
And then also pistol. I mean, pistol will always be a fascination. They didn't run quite as much pistol this year. Does he see pistol as the surrogate for under center? Who knows?
That's the other thing he said, which was big, which every play caller tends to say, but I kind of really think he means it. When you have an established run game, it makes calling those other plays, the auxiliary plays off of it, a lot easier, honestly. It's when you don't have the presence of a run game that things can really get tricky. Which, I mean, Pete Carroll said the same stuff, basically. Right. Like, you need the run game when it's there. Shanahan says the same stuff, and he's much more run heavy, right?
Right.
But it all kind of... unless you're, a pure air raid coach...
Right.
Everyone's going to say that, but... it's cool him saying that.
I mean, like the thing with that, like, you have to have runs in the samples to influence the personnel packages that are on the field, to influence the personnel types that are on the defensive line. You don't, I mean, if you can get Red Bryant to be one of the edges on the field in shotgun out of a formation that you pass 60% of the time out of, if you can make the run matter enough to get Red Bryant out on the field instead of Michael Bennett, if you have a D-line that's deep enough to do that, because Bennett should be on the field anyway, right? But for this analogy, you want to have every reason to be able to throw when Red Bryant is on the field. So it's all about balance, and that's what Pete Carroll's always said. It's balance is the ability to impose as many constraints on the defense as possible, and that means you have to be balanced enough to be able to access different modes of your offense according to whatever the defense puts out on the field. And that's kind of what Grubb is exactly talking about. It's all the same words or different words to convey the same thing. And, it's, so it's like, it's the funny thing is that it's taken a lot more charitably now. It had been in the past, but by some anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I'm straw manning.
No, I think you're probably right. He was also asked about being an offensive line guy at heart, as Mike Macdonald described him. He said how he has a passion for what happens up front and how it ties into the success of every part of the game, and he's always believed that. And when you have a talented and unified group in the O-line room, you've got a chance every week. So, cool. Now, the other thing is he spoke about personnel. So, how much do we read into the fact that whenever Geno Smith is asked about, or the quarterback situation is asked about, not only is Geno mentioned, but then Drew Lock gets mentioned, even though Drew Lock is technically a free agent this year.
Right. That is weird, right? Are they trying to recruit him back at the salary that they want to have him at? I mean, he's a very good backup quarterback as far as backup quarterbacks go. If something terrible were to happen to Geno, and say you have no like what's the word? Say you have no internal like confidence about Drew, but there's part of you that is very curious to be like, hey, what does he look like with 7-8 games? What can we do with him with all this talent and everything? Maybe we've seen improvement in camp and everything. If all that's true, and say something terrible were to happen to Geno, I mean, he's been a little dinged up the past 2 years for a gamer here, a game here or there. Maybe they want to be able to get a complete eval on him before making a quarterback decision the following year. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's a contingency for if they do end up trading Geno.
Yeah, maybe they're trading him.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know.
Like, aggressively shopping him. It was also interesting how he was asked about Geno Smith, and he kind of focused first of all, on not really him as a player, but just more the intangibles aspect of it, and like he's a competitor. He wants to be coached. He wants to be the best. It means a lot to him, and how his story's cool. But also mentioned Drew immediately after. Then got asked in a follow-up about Geno Smith, like as a player, like what type of player he is, and said he had good presence, impressed with his decision-making, mentioned how he led the league in completion percentage in 2022, said tight windows, hard decisions,
good decision maker,
accurate, good decisions, smart, tough, dependable, good decisions again.
But it's the classic, like, does he like him? Is he shopping? Is he selling him?
It wasn't that effusive, right?
It wasn't that effusive, but like they're all things that are true, like things that no one would really disagree with. At least people that are in the football world are going to disagree with at face value. It's just more like how much do you value those things? I don't know. I feel like I feel. Yeah.
He described Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously different positions.
Yeah.
But he described them as focal points of the offense. Although he did also use smart, tough, dependable, and said, I'm excited, I'm really excited. Where Geno, he said, I'm excited. So,
well, yeah. The thing is, though,
part of the podcast.
Say you do want to trade a guy. It takes two to tango. If you do want to trade him, and you can't find a partner, or you can't find the right deal, you don't want to not speak well of someone if you end up being stuck with them anyway.
That's part of what would make trading Geno kind of silly. Like his peak value he's not realized that yet, and by the time he does realize that peak value, then it's not worth doing anyway. So
yeah.
The team isn't going to give you what he's worth after the basic numbers look that bad.
Right. Plus, I mean, if we're just looking at it football-wise, I would imagine that Grubb internally knows that he can have an elite offense with Geno Smith as his quarterback. So much fits. I mean, he can, like when he said good decision maker and everything, and how much drop back they ran at UW and at Fresno State. Like, he knows that Drew can't handle that volume. I mean, there might be a world where you can get an efficient offense out of Drew Lock, but it's probably not running the offense that you want to run. Geno you can run so many different offenses with him. And he can manage so much, like, again, his numbers under pressure and everything. And he can set all the protections. And we've seen him when he isn't pressured. It's just, he's one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. He's really sharp and quick game, like all of it. You'd think that Grubb would be chomping at the bit, like, hey, I can show my stuff right now with Geno, and I can go get my head coaching job if it goes really well, Whereas if he's coaching Drew Lock and he's excited about it, and that's the plan, then he must just be looking at his contract and job security, not necessarily be like in a hurry to advance, because that's a 2-year project if you're really going with Drew Lock. Or if you draft a rookie, he knows they're not getting one of the 3 big guys. If they draft a guy, I mean, he knows all there is to know about Penix. They probably aren't taking Penix at 16. That's probably just not in the cards. He knows whoever they get in the 3rd round, 4th round is going to be a bit of a 2-3-year project. I don't mean project in the sense like, oh, that quarterback's a project, but I'm saying that quarterback realizing themselves, it's going to be not a 1-year thing. And so I always just think of terms of like, not to be cynical, but career advancement is part of it. You take jobs that you think are better for you long term, right? And Geno is better for him long term than Grubb. Ultimately, Grubb has different goals than Macdonald. And Macdonald knows that. That doesn't mean that they're in conflict with one another. But Macdonald's like the team, the organization, and Grubb is like, how can I deliver the best offense possible? That means working with my head coach, but so that I can eventually become a head coach. And Macdonald knows that. But
on Grubb's goals, I wouldn't say like he is viewing this as a one great year and then he's a head coach. I mean, when he was actually asked on when the NFL became a goal for him, because obviously the circumstances in which he left Washington and then was supposedly the Alabama offensive coordinator and then wasn't, was kind of weird. But he said 3 years ago is when he first started looking at if he wanted to pursue the NFL or being like a college head coach. Not that it was going to happen at that moment, but that's when he first started looking at it, looking at the NFL film, talking to NFL people, researching what it would look like in schematic transformation, and then lifestyle and things like that. And he was, while Harbaugh was very positive about college still, Grubb, when he was asked about that by Greg Boyle of the Tacoma News Tribune, he was less enthusiastic. He kind of mentioned the kind of, well, he's asked about the difficulties of it, but he kind of said how the kind of difference in how you're worrying about all these things which aren't really coaching, and how in the NFL you can do just more coaching and just focus on that.
Right.
So yeah, clear that it kind of, in that sense as well, Schneider mentioned the fears of how what happens, you get an OC under a defensive head coach. He talked about this during his head coaching search. They're really good. They get hired away because they're really good to go be a head coach somewhere, and then your offense stalls, your quarterback struggles. But Grubb, the kind of vision of that, I guess, is he's good this year, then he's really good next year. He maybe gets a head coaching chance, but then you've got Huff or one of his assistants to step up and be the new OC. You've got that system in place that Macdonald spoke about, that offensive system that he wants to be unique to the Seattle Seahawks and last over the years, that type of thing in place, which can just be picked up by the next guy. And then suddenly it's, wow. So very ambitious still, undoubtedly ambitious, but the fit really kind of is kind of starting to make sense there. Also mentioned Jake Bobo unprompted, Griff, so...
He did.
More Bobo, possibly.
More Bobo. Good stuff.
Okay. Right. We have a very kind donation from Preston. Preston, thank you so much for your continued support. If you want to donate, there's a super chat feature on YouTube, or there's a Stripe link. Please do get involved if you fancy it. Or if you don't want to do that, just like the video, because that costs nothing. And tell a friend about the podcast. Preston asking... I like the Frisman Jackson hire. Seems like he did a good job with the 2020 and 2021 Panthers receivers. DJ Moore, who we mentioned, and Robbie Anderson. Good name, actually. And then in 2022 and 2023, with the Steelers wide receivers, they lacked volume, mostly because of bad QB play and bad scheme. That's a tough Pittsburgh situation. I know Griff mentioned him not being a passing game coordinator in the NFL, so it's hard to evaluate that, but yeah, that Pittsburgh stuff towards the end was rough, and as Griff alluded to, the work he did with completely blanking on the name, Georgia wide receiver, tall, plays for Pittsburgh. Griff
Pickens.
Yeah, Pickens. Yeah, was impressive.
Indeed.
Although, maybe why he got fired when you see the blocking effort, I don't know. Anyway. Or maybe not fired, but amicably, mutually, we're not going to speak together.
Right.
Okay. Chat, any questions? Griff, any more stuff? I remember, actually, we should talk about John Schneider also went on the radio today Wow,
Indeed.
absolute media fest. He went on with Wyman and Bob. Already mentioned one of the comments from Dave Wyman. Schneider wearing Griff a really cool, I don't know how to describe it, like a throwback Seahawks blue hoodie, but it was just a Nike one with a white tick, and then an embroidered Seattle Seahawks scout patch on there, which looked very snazzy, very cool. And then a Boise State cap. Why did no one ask him why he was wearing a Boise State Broncos cap? Wyman and
Yeah.
Bob, come on now. Like, you're
Let's
on the
look at that.
radio, you're able to ask him about not understanding the new DC's accent, but you can't ask him why he's wearing a Boise State cap?
Yeah, what's up with that? They need to have a quality control, or a one of the producers needs to be a what do you call it? A fashion liaison. Schneider likes his hoodies.
Yeah. Who doesn't?
Yeah, I like hoodies.
Okay, do we have any actual analysis on the Schneider radio interview?
I don't know. You lead on that. What were your takes?
It was, he mentioned that he was asked about what his new Supreme Overlord title of Seahawks personnel means. President of Football Operations, I think, is the official title. And he was explaining how it's basically contractual and still going to be like a group thing. The best decision for the Seahawks is how he phrased it, but it sounded slightly odd, and it's in the general consciousness because ultimately, the Adam Schefter report about Geno Smith came out, but he just mentioned unprompted that he heard earlier today that someone said Geno was more of a Pete guy and not a Schneider guy, and basically dismissing that kind of narrative or notion.
Yeah.
But just he's got the Geno Smith stuff on his mind. He's hearing stuff about it, and then it kind of the Schefter report is a few more kind of Geno things. So
Right.
again,
I mean,
monitoring that.
is it tacit denial of those implications, or is it earnest and honest? I mean,
Is he feeling a bit, is his phone buzzing about Geno Smith? Is he midway through negotiating that? And then he has to come on with Wyman and Bob, and they start talking like it's, I don't know, some like bros just hanging out on the radio, making kind of weird comments about the vice president of Vulcan hugging the head coach's wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is he? Like you said, are those negotiations happening tonight? Is he on the phone with the Vikings? Is he on the phone with the Steelers? Who knows, man? Who knows? Who knows? That would be a great fit, though, with Arthur Smith and Pickens and Deontay Johnson. I don't want to think about it, but
that would be a good fit, and like an okay offensive line, right?
Right.
They could run block.
Right. So who knows? But the haul, dude, that's the thing. The return needs to be.
The return's not going to be. If they did that for a second round pick or something, like get out.
If they did it for a second round pick, I would sour on the whole operation pretty quick.
Okay,
he's going to be your quarterback.
Here's a topic.
Like, that's the thing. Like, who are you going to replace him with?
Okay,
other than King Drake May or Caleb Williams, like get out of here.
This is a good topic to end, Griff.
Yeah.
What would make you sour on the new Seahawks era of Mike Macdonald and John Schneider, football overlord? Did Geno Smith for a second round pick? That would be a good one. I've got a good one though.
I'm trying to think of what would be another one. If I wouldn't sour, I would feel a little sour about it, but I wouldn't sour on the overall operation. If they don't bring Brooks back, I'll be pretty upset.
Okay.
But I think if they were to cap cut Quandre Diggs, I'd be like, the carousel with the defense, like getting a star, letting a guy go, and then as you get another one, you let the other one go. Like, put together a team and keep it together. He's 30. It's going to be 31. He's not 32, 33, 34. I don't know though. It would just feel like really odd rostering strategy. But what's yours?
If they paid Patrick Queen,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Over Brooks, especially because they don't have
yeah.
the money to do both.
Why are we paying a weak side backer who is like almost a liability to the B gap bubble?
That's how you feel. I mean,
That's
see,
how I feel.
my thing
Hey, he
is
makes some cool plays.
he can absolutely make some plays. He can be a good spot dropper. We don't see him carry much, carry seams and everything. I think that's commentary that the scheme doesn't really need him to,
No,
but there is some commentary on the fact that they don't ever ask him to. It's indicative of like what they think he can't handle. Occasionally against empty, he'll find himself the weak hook, and like he's been late to finding three a little bit, and it's just like
he's late to a lot of things, and you like run game stuff as well. And you're like, oh well, maybe they're fitting it like this, and or maybe he's keying this for this. It's like, nah, he's just late. Or
yeah,
he just back. They have a big thing in Baltimore. I'll do a video on it about not getting blocked, right? And they're really good at avoiding blocks and getting off blocks at the right time to the ball. But there's a few plays where he backdoors it, where Roquan Smith is the backside guy, and the run cuts up where he should have been over the top of the block, and it's like, dude, you cannot do that. That's someone you let someone else pay. If they pay him and didn't keep Brooks, that would be insane.
Yeah, I'm pretty firm about Brooks being better than Queen, so that would be. I would
Well,
rather.
they're different players. One's a Mike linebacker, one's a Will.
Yeah, there you go. Especially in the scheme. Um, the other thing here is if they do trade Geno, like who, what is the ethos behind that move? You are
How do
not going
you
to get into the top
you
three unless they pull something out of a hat.
yeah
So
yeah
who's the replacement?
yeah? This selling that to the sell is that you're going to get like going to draft a quarterback in the first. Like the sell,
Right.
how you pitch that to ownership, like most fans, right?
Yeah.
This is mental.
And
It'd be absolutely crazy because I don't like how disappointed with you. Like the team interest we're seeing from people as an all-time high. Thank you, those of you tuning in live for us. But we've noticed our numbers going up. I think everyone's numbers are going up. For the team to have like a losing record with like Drew Lock as the quarterback, or even if they have a losing record with Geno, something's gone really wrong. But for them to have a losing record with Drew Lock as the quarterback, that is a tough sell. Or even if they force a rookie, right? But
yeah,
can you imagine how quickly people would be like, nah. And this is a pretty spoilt fan base, for the
incredibly
past
spoiled.
however many years, Like,
They are, aren't they like
we
the
have never
second most
seen a
winningest
bad
team
Seahawks team. What?
since the Holmgren era? Aren't they the second winningest team in the NFC since the Holmgren era started?
I think, yeah.
It's the
There's
Jim
never been a
Mora
bad
years.
Pete Carroll team.
Yeah.
Other than,
Um,
even the first year, they were scrappy, right?
and they got to the playoffs. It was the second year, but then the second year the defense finished really strong. And
Right. So then it's like there's some cope, and then wow, yeah.
right. But so like we do know with Schneider in the quarterback position, he likes to throw mid-round picks at potential reclamation projects. He likes to spend mid-round picks on quarterbacks.
Don't.
At least
Okay. There's one name here. If you say this name, I'm gonna end the stream.
um, um, would Atlanta? But we have to
No,
consider,
don't say the name. Don't say the name.
we have to. I won't say his name because you guys know who.
I'm gonna end the stream if you say the name.
Okay, I won't. But
Okay.
would Atlanta be one of the teams to come calling for Geno? We know that Schneider is willing to take a chance on a guy, but I'm all for him taking a chance on someone like that of that caliber of investment, like drafting a guy in the third round or sending a fourth round pick for so and so.
So you're saying you would trade Geno Smith for Desmond Ridder?
No. But I'm saying he got to do this with Geno still on the roster. If he wants to go crazy and be like, "Hey, there's a backup quarterback,"
but they have that guy in Drew Lock in Schneider's eyes, right?
Yeah, but I would, yeah, but see, but with the Locke is developmental, and he's getting too old to be called developmental at this point. The other guy is not
Hey,
developmental.
he's just a kid.
He's a
He's
young
had a
boy.
kid. Congrats. He's just
Um,
a kid.
but we also gotta consider, would he flip a 5th round pick for Mac Jones?
I
Could
think the
that
two factors here are, again, Schneider mentioning that Geno's a peak guy and how it's nonsense. That him saying that is almost, that's also admitting that yeah, he was a peak guy. Like yeah, he was on board
happen?
with Geno, but that was a Pete kind of Pete was on board, like on board with that. In the same way that Schneider was the one who wanted Drew Lock, right? He wanted Drew Lock in that package. And
Well,
what if he's just lock pilled? What if he's
we
like,
have to
hey, he
remember
came
though,
in against the Cowboys, he made some plays.
Pete spoke extremely highly of Drew Lock post trade. I mean, he was talking about how we can win a Super Bowl with this guy.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right. You're right. Okay,
so
fine. But the other factor to this is McDonald comes in. He says they want to have a core identity of being physical and running the ball, right? What if they're just looking for like and these types of guys don't grow on trees, particularly from a health perspective. But what if they're looking for a Cam Newton, a Colin Kaepernick, a Lamar Jackson? Um, what if they need a QB who can run the football and be a big part of the run game, and it looks more like a Greg Roman style 49ers offense, but perhaps more modern, in the passing game, the drop back game, and just more fitted to 2024 NFL ball? What if that's a thing?
we
Anyway, stuff to monitor, but hopefully it doesn't come to that for the reasons we've mentioned. Griff, anything else? The Ridder tripling. Well, I don't know what point I don't know how many downing you're doing with that, but that was a wild one.
No, I've taken the L on him. I'm just saying it's not
It
over.
doesn't sound like it.
You'll see. You'll all see.
Hey, I like Ridder too.
I mean, his
I'm just not
numbers
trying to
since week
trade.
5 would surprise
I'm just
you.
not trying to trade Geno Smith for
No,
him. And you
goodness,
weren't either. Let me not.
no.
It just sounded like that was sounded like you were trading Geno for him in a first.
Yeah, I will say the tenor that dominated the timeline was not commensurate with reality. Every year, like, oh, what every Sunday, oh my God, Ritter's terrible. I go and watch the tape back. I'm like, yeah, it was a bad play, but he had a good game. Otherwise, there would be a lot of that. But there's a lot of confirming of biases. Not to say I haven't developed a bias. I'm sure it comes across that way. But what are you supposed to do when from week 5 on, or no, from week 10 on, he's literally one of the 5 most efficient quarterbacks in pure dropback scenarios? Like, why is the young guy good at the hard stuff and bad at
Why
the
couldn't
easy
they
stuff?
call it a good play action? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know why he would just kind of lose his mind when it would be play action. Maybe if turning his back to the defense, I don't know, maybe 2-point and shoot. I'm telling
Turning
you,
the back to the defense.
maybe
Changing
if
the
Kyle
picture.
Shanahan had Ridder, he would have even better output than Brock Purdy. Is where I'm at. If Kyle Shanahan did.
Okay. Right. Well, with that chat, we'll be back probably next week, unless there's massive Seahawks news. But we'll be back next week. We still have Senior Bowl stuff to do. Maybe we'll have to look at the quarterbacks. We still have Senior Bowl tape we'll break down. We have Mike Macdonald's defense to get into. I know there's an appetite for that. Please do like the video. Follow Griff on Twitter at CMikeSpinMove. Follow me at Matty F. Brown. If you're listening to the pod, 5-star review, tell a friend. Thank you so much. We've got quite a few reviews now, and they're all 5-star, which is great. Just don't be the arsehole, gives it a 1-star. It'd be quite funny, but don't. And then follow the pod at Seattle Overload. Retweet it, share it. That's the main thing. Word of mouth, tell a friend, etc., etc. Thank you, Preston, again for your donation. You're very kind, Preston. Much appreciate it. Big O saying we need film breakdowns live. Hey, they're coming. They're coming. We've had to learn the McDonald defense. Now, we're not going to be perfect, but, we may have bobbed and weaved, got our hands on a few resources, etc., etc. Griff, any closing wisdom for people?
I don't know. Eat your vegetables. Drink some water. No, Maddie, we need to resolve this whole milk thing. What do you guys call anything 1%, 2% in
No,
the supermarket?
no.
So you said you call it skim, aka non-fat. Do you guys call it
Yeah.
non-fat?
No, skimmed, semi-skimmed,
Semi-skim.
and so whole milk has. Hold on now. Whole milk has a blue top, semi-skimmed has a green top, and fully skimmed has a green top. No, hold on. A red top.
See, the problem here, though, is that in America, we have 1% and 2%. Now, 1% isn't as common. I don't know, man.
Preston, I've got you on the Super Bowl 48 film breakdown. We'll do that.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. There's no problem. I'm fine. I'm getting my milk.
Yeah, I'm glad you get your milk. Good for you.